Lesson 12.1 is Pythagorean theorem. Okay, the Pythagorean theorem states that if you take the two sides that touch the right angle, we call them legs, A and B, and square them, they're going to equal the hypotenuse, which is the longest side of the right triangle. So a right triangle has two legs, right, that touch that right angle, and then it also has a hypotenuse, which is the longest side of that right triangle. The hypotenuse must be across from the right angle. So those are the parts of your right triangle. So Pythagorean theorem is saying if we square those legs, they're going to equal that hypotenuse squared. So it says to substitute values for A, B, and C into Pythagorean theorem to find the length of the other side. So if we use this Pythagorean theorem, A squared plus B squared equals C squared, if A is 2 and B is 3, we should be able to find C, the hypotenuse. So instead of A, I'm going to put 2. So 2 squared. Plus, instead of B, 3. So 3 squared. That's going to equal C squared. So if I simplify this, I get 4 plus 9. 2 squared is 4. 3 squared is 9, which equals C squared. Okay? Now I get 13 equals C squared when I add those together. 4 plus 9. I have to move over here. So 13 is going to equal C squared. We need to undo that squaring by finding the square root. So like C squared is C times C, right? So to find just C, I found the square root of it. The square root of C squared is C. Now to do that in your calculators, I'm going to show you how to do that on your calculators here. We'll do a video to show you that. Okay. So in your calculators, you're going to push the second button. Okay. Mine's not on. Hold on a second. Okay. So you're going to push the second button. Then you're going to push this where it says squared, because that's the radical above there in the yellow. That's your square root button. And then I'm going to put in 13. Okay. So now in there I have the square root of 13. When I push equals, I get 3.6 and it goes on. We're going to round to the nearest tenth. So behind that 6 is a 0. So we're going to round that to the nearest tenth. So it's going to be 6. So on your sheet, you're going to write 3.6. So it's approximately 3.6 yards. Okay. The next example is having us name the parts of the right triangle. So we have two legs and a hypotenuse. So I'm going to do these legs in blue. Okay. One leg would be this line segment AC, and the other leg would be the line segment BC. This leg is B and this leg is 15. So I'm going to say this one leg is 15, right? Or, I'm going to erase this. Maybe I can't. Or I could call that line segment AC. Oh, that was BC. Sorry. Whoops. BC. We're doing that one first. Okay, the other leg is B, or I can name that as line segment AC or CA. It doesn't matter. Okay? And then the hypotenuse is going to be 25, or I call it line segment AB. So those are the parts of my right triangle. The hypotenuse is always opposite that right angle. This is my hypotenuse, the 25. So we're going to find the missing sides by using Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so on the first one, I'm going to fill in my formula A squared plus B squared equals C squared. I know my A is 8 and my B is 15 and my C is unknown. Okay, so 8 squared plus 15 squared equals C squared. And it doesn't matter which one you call A and which one you call B. I usually make the shorter leg A and the longer leg B, but it does not matter. So when I square that, use your calculators. 8 squared is 64, 8 times 8, plus 15 squared, so 15 times 15, you're using your calculators to do these quickly, equals c squared. My next step is to add those together. 64 plus 225 gives me 289 equals c squared. Now I find the square root. Bump that again. The square root of 289 is 17 equals c. So this is 17 inches. C is 17 inches long here. Okay, now we're going to do when we're looking for a leg. We know A is unknown, B is going to be your 24, and your hypotenuse, your C, is going to be 26. So it's a little bit different than the ones we've done. So I'm going to leave A squared plus B squared equals C squared as my formula. A is unknown, so I just write that down. B is 24, so I square 24, and C is 26. So again, we're going to use our calculators. We're going to square 24. 24 times 24. You should get 576. Make sure you're working these out. 26 squared, so 26 times 26 gives you 676. Good. Now we solve this just like we solve all of our one-step equations. This is going to end up being a 2 because we're going to find the square root. We're going to subtract 576 from both sides. We want to get A by itself, right? So now that's gone. So we are left with A squared equals, if we subtract these, we get 100. Now again, we want to undo that squared. So we're going to find the square root, right? The square root of A squared. We knew that was A times A. And the square root of 100, use your calculator. Maybe you know 100, the perfect square of 100 is 10. So we know it's 10 centimeters. So A is going to be 10 centimeters. So go ahead and do your guided practice. You need to turn to page 378 in your workbooks. Okay, make sure that you're on page 378. It says to find the length of the missing sides of the triangle. So we have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. They already filled in A being 24. So we need to fill in our B being 10. So 10 squared equals C squared. So now we need to combine those. So 24 squared, right? Which is 576 plus our 100 is going to give us the 676. So to know what the length of the hypotenuse is, we have to find the square root, and the square root of 676, go ahead and use your calculator. 676, push your equal sign. We know that this is 26 feet. Okay. Mr. Wu wants to ship a fishing rod that is 42 inches long to his son. He has a box with the dimension shown. Find the square of the length of the diagonal across the bottom of the box. Okay, so if you look at this box, okay, you know the length here, we'll put that in blue, is 40. You know the width is 10 and the height is 10, right? So that means you know this side, right? And you know this side. But we're trying to find this diagonal from this corner to this corner. So it's going to be a couple steps. So we're going to find the square of the length of the diagonal across the bottom of the box. So the first step we're looking for, I'll put it in green, this one. That's the first question it's asking for. Okay. So let's use Pythagorean theorem. We have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So we know one of our legs is 10, and we know the other leg is 40. But we don't know that hypotenuse. So we have 100 plus 40 squared, which is 1600, equals C squared. Okay. So now I know that this is 1700, right? Equals C squared. And that's what it asks for. It asks us for the square of that diagonal. So this squared, 1700 plus 40 squared, which is 1600, equals C squared. Okay, so now I know that this is 1700, right? Equals C squared. And that's what it asks for. It asks us for the square of that diagonal. So this squared, of that diagonal. So this squared the c squared is 700. That was the first, or 1700, excuse me. That was the first question. Find the square of the length, okay? So now the next question says to find the length from the bottom corner to the opposite top corner to the nearest tenth. So now we're looking for, I'll do it in yellow, this diagonal from one corner back to the other, okay? So now my legs I'm going to put in red. This would be a leg, right? And this would be a leg. So we just found that one. Okay, so we're still using Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Now my a squared I already did, right, was 100. And my b squared I just found, plus 1700, should equal my c squared. Add these together, I get 1800 equals c squared. Now this one says we're going to round it to the nearest, well, it doesn't tell us, we'll round to the nearest tenth, okay? So we're going to put 1800, and we're going to say second square root, 1800 equals, and you're going to get c being approximately 42.4 if you round to the nearest tenth, okay? So on that blank, it's 42.4, it's a little bit bigger than that, right? Inches is the length from here to here in yellow. Will that fishing rod fit in that box diagonally, is what they're asking. So we're going to say yes, it will. Okay. Question 3 says to state the Pythagorean theorem and tell you how you use it to solve problems. Okay. Pythagorean theorem says for a right triangle with legs of, let's say, lengths A and B and hypotenuse of length C, a squared plus b squared is going to equal c squared. Okay, now we have to tell how we're going to use it to solve problems. Let's say you can use it to find the length of a side of a right triangle that is unknown. You have to know the other two, but you can find that unknown side. That is unknown.